Eraclea, Eraclea.
Alright, did you get that? Eraclea? Eraclea. Something like that. Today on the program we are using a malt from Italy, malted in Germany. You heard the pronunciation. That name of what you just heard is actually the name of the region. I'm going to get the camera set up here. We'll talk about this for a minute. Alright, so let me show you where this comes from. It's pretty fun to see. This pin is, so that's Venice, and you can see Italy. So it's off the Adriatic Sea, and it is grown in a part of the world that you would not think of as making a lot of malt. Now, the sponsors of this program today are BSG Handcraft. Thank you so much to you guys for hooking me up with this malt. It's only been available in the United States for a couple of years, I believe. Also, I have more Imperial yeast. Thank you to Imperial for providing the yeast. I will talk about that in a minute. So when you talk about terroir, it is a characteristic taste and flavor imparted by the environment in which something is produced. So often that's referred to grapes and how the wine gets a unique character, but in this case it can be a factor in this malt. So there's a pretty good article on Eraclea malt. You can find it if you Google malt from the Mediterranean. It's by Horst Dornbusch. It seems to be in this magazine called The New Brewer, July, August 2018, but you can just find the article. It's pretty comprehensive write-up of how this came to be and what the characteristics are. One of the quotes is, "Malt quality is a composite set of properties determined not just by the barley's genetic traits and malting procedure, but also by the plant's growing conditions." So in this case, water or lack of, the temperature, the amount of sunlight, the nutrient composition, drainage of the soil, things like that will factor into how the malt turns out, even if it was the same variety of malt but grown in a different location. The origins of Eraclea malt goes back to the 70s, although it's just sort of been commercially malted and available recently. This barley does not do well in humid growing conditions typical of Bavaria. It prefers arid conditions and has the most important ability to store humidity, store moisture when it's growing. Now, what does this malt taste like, or what is it said to taste like? What will it do? It will create excellent medium-bodied Mediterranean-style pale lagers and ales with perfect stable foam. We'll see about that, huh? It has a noticeable malty sweet aroma with notes of honey. So, to test this malt, you guys have seen me do a lot of these craft maltster experimental batches, which is sort of a different twist of this, because that might be the same type of malt, but just malted differently. This is a completely kind of new type of malt that is malted into a Pils malt. I'm just going to do 100%, 10 pounds of it. Hopefully it'll be somewhere around 1050. The hop is sort of whatever you want, whatever you have on hand. I'm using a lager yeast. I'm using Imperial Yeast L28 Eraclea. Reason I'm using that is it has a little higher temperature range than some of the lager yeasts, and we're not super cold here yet in St. Paul. That strain is a traditional Czech lager strain. It allows for a nice balance between hops and malts. It can be slightly sulfury during fermentation, but it cleans up during lagering. Okay, excellent. Anyway, so yeah, simple hop bill. I have some Falconer's Flight on hand. I'm just using that. Simple grain bill. I have the boil is actually finished. I need to throw in my flame out hops just because I opened a 2-ounce bag of hops and I used 1 ounce for bittering. And why not? And then we'll get it chilled down and we'll do a brew day wrap up. Go from there. Here is the sack of malt that has been dropped off by BSG Craft. Thank you guys so much. We'll be getting into this on this first batch of brew and also subsequent batches of brews. Here is the yeast starter, and here is the yeast. I have been very happy with most every Imperial strain I have used, and this one, like I said in the quick intro has a little bit of a higher temperature range, which will be good for me. So I'm gonna make up a starter, and tomorrow we'll be doing the rest of the boil and pitching the yeast. Alright, keeping it simple here, just a little Marvin, but the beer is in the fermenter, ready for the yeast starter, which is here, and I see in my couple minutes it's already settling, so I'll swirl it up. It's gonna be, I'll get a definitive reading, but it's about 1046 or so, so that's okay. I was usually this amount of grain and this amount of volume, it's usually 1050, sometimes more, but I'll get a good reading. But yeah, I got 5 gallons. It's what do we got here? Nice and cool. It's 58, 60 degrees, so all I have to do is aerate it, pitch the yeast, clean up, and it'll be off to the races. Here we are about 22 hours after pitching, 50 degrees. I'm gonna maybe, if I cover it with a couple of shirts, it will warm up a couple of degrees. I think the range for this yeast is 50 to 56 or something, I forget. I think I just showed it to you guys. It already has a nice little krausen, kind of some interesting foam, and it is bubbling away. So we are off to a good start. I'm racking this Eraclea beer. It is roughly down to 1.007, maybe 0.008. I had more volume than I could fit into the carboy, so I have this is actually more than a pint. This is on the left is a pint glass. So I have that amount to sample. I have not sampled it yet, and I have, you know, a good 5 gallons plus in here. I'm racking it because it's been a couple weeks, and also because I don't know when I'll keg it for sure, and I don't want to leave it in the primary. Also, I want to wash the yeast for a couple of next batches. However, let's get an initial taste. This is a little bit more than your regular hydrometer sample. I'm also getting over a cold, which is not really here nor there, but you know, I feel like I'm, even with the little stuffy nose, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of hop aroma, and come to think of it, I think I did throw in some of those hops at the end. Falconer's Flight, I think, is that what I used? I believe so. It tastes nice. It's does have a little bit of bitterness. It has a nice malt character. My full tasting faculties are not available today. There's a little bit of bitterness, but I don't think it's overly bitter. Sometimes when it gets that low in gravity, if you've bittered it a little bit too much, you can get close to having it be a little more bitter than you want. But it's very young. It's 2 weeks old. It's gonna mellow out a little bit. It's gonna just condition, and I don't lager it at lager temperatures, but it's gonna be in a cold closet now until it gets kegged. At this early point, I'm often just looking to see if it's not bad, if it's actually not tasting like a bad result at this point, and it certainly is not tasting bad. So I am hopeful. We will give it a little time. I will probably do some gelatin to get it clear. We'll get a better crack at the flavor of this yeast, which I have not used, the Eraclea, and also the malt. So check in when it's kegged. Alright, so here is the Eraclea Pilsner in the glass. And it's pretty clear, as you can see. And look who else we have. Chip and Joe and Eric.
Good fellas.
Alright guys, I've briefed you and I've debriefed you on this experiment. I haven't debriefed. That'll come later. So, this beer has been in the keg for. Oh, that's funny. I'm looking at Chip's camera, which is not recording.
Too many camera.
Too many mics. Been in the keg for a couple of weeks. I did use gelatin. It did get clear. Cheers to everybody. We haven't done a cheers on the previous videos. Blah blah blah. So
no, we haven't.
the malt is said to have a stable foam. I poured mine aggressively to see if that would be the case. I have enjoyed this beer so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's well, you know what? Enough of my yapping. Let's see what y'all think. What do you think of the beer in general? Any impressions, one way or another?
Like Joe said, like the nose is a little caramel, sweet or almost like honey-ish. You get as far as caramel. Yeah.
I get a little sweet caramel or something on the nose. Pleasant.
Okay.
Very pleasant. I like it.
It smells
easy drinking,
accessible.
Yeah, it's I guess it's close enough or closest to a German Pils with it's a German malted malt, and it's 100% Pils like your German Pils beers often will be. It's not a German hop, it's Falconer's Flight. One of my surprises is that the Falconer's Flight, which is several years old but was vacuum sealed and stored in a freezer, I think contributes a little more character than I expected. I don't have in front of me how much I used. I had that in the previous video.
Your bird versus fish kind of out of this, which could be, there's Chinook.
I think the
Chinook,
Chinook,
Cascade,
Citra.
I mean, there are some fruity notes to these hops.
But also like a little dankness to my taste.
I feel like it's very IPL, but at 5, it's like a session.
So it got down to 1.006, which is a pretty low final gravity, but for this type of beer that you want it to be kind of crisp and dry-ish, I think that's okay. 5.3%. Started at 1.047. The malt was said, as I said earlier, to contribute malty sweet aromas.
Oh, it even said notes of honey.
Notes of honey. So that's
Good thing we didn't read this in advance for a change. Where we're just like,
so the yeast is the Imperial Yeast. It's Eraclea. And
did I brew that?
Which oh my God!
We've done that before. That's old.
I wonder if that's the Eraclea strain. Maybe.
I
would assume.
would assume so. Yeah.
I could have looked this up, but
You
I
can
think
talk
the
about
yeast. I read this earlier. It can be it's nice balance between hops and malt. Sure. I guess that's just saying it's not going to contribute a whole lot of the character by itself, which is kind of what I want in a lager yeast, honestly. I want the malt to come forward, or the hops, or a balance of both. Cleans up during lagering. This beer has not been lagered for very long. It's not been kept particularly cold for very long, but I don't think you get sulfur notes from the yeast, so I think that's nice. Light ester profile. I don't know if there's much of that either.
I'm not getting that.
One thing that Michael Dawson commented to me is that he thought that this Pilsner malt, the Eraclea, was a little perhaps drier and thinner in overall presentation than some of your Pilsner malts. I know I've been a fan of the, don't tell me, sweeter.
The Barca Pils?
I've been a fan of the Barca Pils, which I've used a number of times, and that I think is a little bit more on the sweet side. So compared to something like that, yes, maybe this is a little drier or thinner. Does that have anything to do with where it's grown, how it's grown, the more arid conditions? Maybe.
It can also be helping the hops pop.
Yeah.
If he thinks it does have a kind of drier and a more almost out of the way kind of body to it, then these hops are gonna like.
So he was saying maybe you would want to use another specialty grain or additional specialty grains with this malt, which is what I did in another batch of beer that will be coming up, and maybe even additional beers. But
I just
so
feel
far,
like the color of this looks I mean, it looks a little darker than I would just assume straight Pils. It's got this slightest, like in the deepest
For me,
part of
it's
the glass.
well, this is a thinner, narrower
Yeah.
glass, especially at the bottom. But
Well, ours are.
you know what? Check out the foam, the stable foam.
Yeah.
So that's
Grandpa would be proud.
and I have the lace. So yeah, that's working. Yeah. So far, I mean, thank you BSG Handcraft for the malt. Thank you Imperial Yeast for the yeast. Thank you Chris Paynes for the hops.
Chris Pangs!
Thank you St. Paul for
Major-
the delicious water.
Major Pangs.
But yeah, I'm happy with this malt. I believe you can buy this malt. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I hope that you can, because otherwise it's kind of like a tease, you know? Like, get this unique malt and try it, but oh, you can't get it, sorry.
Beer you'll never
I think you
have.
can get it. Check it out. Check out BSG Handcraft. Give them some hell. See if they can get it to you.
Thank you, Don, for brewing it.
Thank me for brewing it. Thank you for coming over. Alright guys,
Peace.
catch you later. Look at that glizzass. Beautiful. Just when you thought the Pilsner tasting video was done,
But it's not.
it's not done. It's not over.
It's never done.
I found
You're gonna
this
still
guy.
be working on this video.
Hmm?
You're still gonna be working on this video in the summer.
It's gonna be my lifetime project. So basically, I want to do a real quick touch in with this dude. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me.
2 questions. Can the homebrewers of the world, of the United States, let's start there, get this malt if they want to?
Probably the world too. Yeah.
Oh.
It's there's not a ton of acreage of Eraclea right now, but it is being imported into the United States. You might need to special order it or request it, but it's available in 55-pound, 25-kilo sacks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if you're intrigued by it, ask your local homebrewer, or if you don't have one of those and you mail order, then check around. Second question is, this is a single malt beer. How do you characterize the result of making a beer, of this particular beer with this malt? What do you think of it? Does it work?
I love this beer. Yeah, I think it works great. Weyermann's recommendation on it is to use it with noble hops,
Okay,
right? So
sure.
you know, which being German, that's what they're gonna suggest, right?
Sure.
They're not gonna tell you to go out and hit it with like Galaxy and
Right. And
a bunch of
my
passion fruit stuff.
comment in the previous tasting video was that the hops kind of were coming through more than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
They are an American blend of all those C hops. Makes it a little bit of a goofy beer, but the malt profile is pretty solid, and I think nice.
It's super crushable.
Yeah.
Nice work.
So there you go. If you want to try a unique malt that has a nice kind of story behind it and something that's different, and also, I don't know if it was you were telling me about this, but possibly they might be creating some of these varieties for the future when you
That's-
might not be able to grow malt in all of the climates that they've been grown.
That was the reason why they were developing a variety that they could grow in Italy
Yeah.
to cope with changing climate.
So you're actually supporting green causes by buying this malt.
Or at
in a
least
roundabout way.
yellow pills clauses. Yeah.
Alright, well, this video's been gone on long enough. Thanks for watching. Try this malt if you're interested. Thanks to BSG Handcraft. Catch you later. On with the brew day.